All right. Hello, class. This is Bill. This is my week 5 video, and I'm here with Gary Apala. He's had a annulment, and I thought what I would ask him to do is share his experiences of this, as most of us are unfamiliar with it, and let us get a little insight into that. So, Gary, what can you tell us about your annulment and when that happened?
Um, well, I think my annulment was back in the around the mid 90s, and my wife and I had been married for a little less than 10 years. Um, and things unfortunately didn't work out at that point. I had a small daughter at that point, and we uh, I've been a Catholic since birth, so I wanted to go through the process. I had a good priest friend who was very active in annulments, and he recommended it. He also had he was a deacon at our parish, and then ultimately was a parish priest in another parish. And he had a secretary who actually did all the annulment preparation and typing and work and stuff like that. So I went through the process and filled out the questionnaire. And there was, I felt after learning more about annulments, I thought there were some faults in our marriage in terms of form and content initially. My former wife had a uh, resistance, or she right before the wedding wanted to, like 2 days before the wedding, wanted to opt out. And so there was some question about inform and content. And I don't remember all the details of that, but that's part of the annulment process. Anyway, we went through and filled it out. And of course, one of the things I asked was, well, what if she doesn't respond to the questionnaire? And they said that really wouldn't make an impact to the annulment. I don't know whether she ever did respond or not, but anyway, this priest friend secretary did the type up for me of the questionnaire and the annulment, went through the process, and uh, about, I think, 2 or 3 months later, I did get notification that the annulment was approved by the marriage tribunal here in the Diocese of St. Petersburg. And curiously enough, when I went back later, I learned something also. When I went back later to my parish where I grew up and where I was baptized, I happened to see in another city that in the parish records, actually that marriage was crossed through, that it was not valid in the records. So the church does keep very detailed records on that. So that was kind of a very positive experience. I've also been, after going through it, and because I was active in the church, always was an advocate of recommending annulments for other people as really a form of healing from their unsuccessful marriage in the church.
It's interesting what you said about being crossed out in the other parish. Where was the other parish where you saw it crossed out?
Up in the Midwest in Milwaukee, where I grew up, it was my St. Augustine, my grade school parish. Somehow, um, I was up there and was checking on the records or something. Maybe it was for something else, for my second marriage or something, and I saw that it actually showed. It was, I can't remember at this point, Bill, if it was either crossed out or removed as if a true annulment. So don't hold me to that. It may not have been listed that it, uh, that like it, as the annulment, like the marriage didn't take place.
Yeah, that's interesting. That they're very meticulous in that. And how did you?
Whatever the records were, it was very accurate. I was surprised that notification through the tribunal was made back to my home parish where I was baptized and went to Catholic grade school for 8 years, received all the sacraments and so forth, and that their records were updated. I had no idea that that would take place.
Yeah, that is surprising. You said it was a healing process. How so?
Well, being a lifelong Catholic from birth, I just felt that I was now rejoined as an active member of the Catholic faith, totally in concert with the Catholic Church in terms of going through my unsuccessful marriage, and could really be truly an active participant in the faith. And that was what was a healing process for me. It was something, the whole idea of an annulment is you go through it, obviously, for to be able to receive the sacraments in good faith, but as a healing for you, uh, as a healing process, your spiritual healing, if you're committed to be a Catholic and involved in the faith.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you've worked with other groups, people who had gone through similar uh, divorces and separations, so forth. What are their misconceptions that you run into, you know, when you talk to other people going through the process?
Being an advocate, always being an advocate for what the church teaches and for the annulment process. At the time going through my divorce, obviously I had I told the psychologist buddy, I says I really need some support and I need support now, and he suggested several different support groups, and there were Christian. Matter of fact, there was actually a very good divorce support group in Tampa. It was run by another one of the other Protestant faith denominations here in Tampa in the downtown area. And I went to that. There was also one I was involved in that was run by the Catholic Church. But anyway, the one that was in the Catholic Church, I ran into some other Catholics, and I found out that, and of course I was talking about, well, I said, when we get through this, I want to go through an annulment. And there was just a lot of misconception about annulment and what divorce meant for a divorcing Catholic. I remember one for a lady who was a friend in the group says, "Oh, I'm going through a divorce now and I'm Catholic. My children aren't going to be legitimate anymore." And I go, "That's not the case at all. That's not what the Catholic Church believes or teaches." So that was one misconception. I'm trying to think if there was uh, anything else, and I think the be, you know the difference in it being a sacramental marriage, there was a lot of confusion with civil annulment. People might have heard of a civil annulment of a marriage and comparing it to that, and it's altogether different experience and set of circumstances. So that was the main difference.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what about the your daughter? How did you ever notice any impact on her, on any effect on her?
Well, my daughter, when we got divorced, was about 3.5. So it was obvious the type of thing that um, you're not going to discuss with a 3.5 or 4 year old or 5 year old. So it really didn't impact her. As a matter of fact, we still continued to go to weekly mass, and when she became of age, I was the one that took her to CCD class, evening CCD class on Tuesday night at my new parish, and actually kind of as a comfort to her at that age, and because I wanted to be involved with her, president had to drop her off anyway, kind of was a teaching aid in her CCD class, first to third grade, so that and a matter of fact, when I'd take her, she'd say, "Dad, are you going to teach tonight?" So I could be actively involved and present um, in her Catholic education, because I was very cognizant of the impact, particularly at that age, of an impact of, and had read a lot on what it does to a child of divorce. So it I wanted to be very present and be a comfort to her during that whole process as well.
Yeah, it sounds like you really did get that opportunity and were able to stay connected with her. Uh, and that's really wonderful because I know that's not always the experience people have.
No, and I only had 1 day a week with her and every other weekend. And I actually went back and had another hearing scheduled so I could get 2 days a week, Tuesday and Thursday nights with her overnight, and every other weekend, and a very dedicated dad. So it was important to me to be involved and active in her life. And it's very unfortunate that some fathers don't take that role. And I think it really does damage to uh, to children. As a matter of fact, my daughter is 35 now. We were just at a family wedding, and she texted me after the wedding, and we are back in town. She lives in Orlando. I live in Tampa, and she said, that it was great that we could be together for the whole weekend, and she kind of said also, because we talked about how I might be too much there for her at times, and she texted me back and said, "Thanks, Dad, for always having my back in my life." And nothing warms a father's heart, especially with a daughter, than to hear that from a daughter.
I want to give a few closing thoughts to the interview I had with Gary. Marriage, according to the Catechism, is an efficacious sign of the covenant between Christ and his church. It's the closest union that we here on earth can experience and a preparation for our eventual union with the Father. Sin is the opposite of that. It breaks the covenant. Divorce and remarriage breaks a covenant. As we've gone through this, we've looked at annulment as the end of a marriage, and in a sense, it is. It's technically the declaration of a marriage that didn't ever exist, but it's an end. And yet, when we talked to Gary, he saw it differently. He saw the annulment as the beginning of his restoration with the life of the church.